grand hall of the shogun's palace lay cloaked in a dense, uneasy silence as Takeda Ryunosuke stepped through the heavy sliding doors, the weight of his blade at his side grounding him in the moment. The flickering candlelight cast long, trembling shadows that danced along the polished wooden floor, their wavering forms mirroring the turmoil in his heart. Every breath was measured, every movement deliberate. The very air seemed charged with anticipation, as if the ancient walls themselves held their breath. Ahead, the imposing figure of Lord Matsuda Nobuyuki awaited him, his dark robes flowing like a shadow among shadows, eyes sharp and unyielding beneath furrowed brows. Ryunosuke's gaze met Matsuda's cold, calculating stare without flinching. This was the man who had orchestrated the web of betrayal, threatening to unravel the shogunate's delicate balance. The architect of countless innocent lives shattered beneath his ambition. And now, here, in the heart of power, they would settle their fates with steel and honor. "You have come far, Ryunosuke," Matsuda said, his voice a low, measured rumble that echoed softly against the high ceiling. "But your adherence to that outdated code will be your undoing. Power belongs to those willing to seize it, not to those who cling to ideals." Ryunosuke's jaw tightened. "Power without honor is a poison that will kill the land you claim to protect. Today, I end this." With a swift motion, Ryunosuke drew his katana, the blade singing softly as it slipped free from its scabbard. Matsuda responded in kind, his own sword gleaming coldly in the candlelight. The clash of steel shattered the stillness, a thunderous rhythm of strikes and parries echoing through the hall. Each movement was a conversation, sharp, precise, laden with years of training and unspoken grievances. Ryunosuke's strikes were swift, born from a lifetime of discipline and a burning desire for justice. Matsuda countered with ruthless efficiency, every blow calculated to exploit weakness and hesitation. In the shadows near the entrance, Kenta Moriyama watched, his broad shoulders tense, the scars on his face a testament to battles fought and loyalty unwavering. His eyes flicked between the dueling figures, heart pounding with anxious hope. He knew the stakes. Failure here would mean the collapse of everything they had fought for. As the duel intensified, Ryunosuke felt the weight of his past pressing down upon him, the fallen clan, the betrayals, the code that had both guided and constrained him. Yet with every breath he chose to press forward, balancing honor with pragmatism, wielding both as weapons against darkness. Matsuda lunged with a sudden ferocity, forcing Ryunosuke to parry with a sharp clang that sent vibrations through his arms. The cold steel bit into the wood beneath their feet as they circled, two predators locked in a deadly dance. "You could join me," Matsuda hissed, his voice laced with venomous promise. "Together, we could reshape this empire. You, with your skill, and honor me, with my vision and power." Ryunosuke's eyes narrowed. "I would rather die by my own blade than live under your tyranny." With a final decisive strike, Ryunosuke disarmed Matsuda, sending his sword clattering to the floor. The room fell into a heavy silence, broken only by the ragged breathing of the two men. Matsuda's face twisted into a fleeting expression of regret before hardening once more. "So be it," he said, his voice barely a whisper. Ryunosuke stepped back, lowering his blade but keeping his guard. "Your conspiracy ends here. The shogunate will endure, but the cost of your ambition will not be forgotten." Outside the hall, the distant sound of approaching footsteps signaled the arrival of loyal guards, summoned by the disturbance. Kenta stepped forward, relief washing over his face as he closed the distance to Ryunosuke. "It is done," Ryunosuke said quietly, though the weight of victory pressed heavily on him. but the path ahead remains uncertain. Honor is a burden, and justice is never without sacrifice. As they exited the palace, the first light of dawn crept over the horizon, casting a soft glow that promised renewal yet whispered of lingering shadows. Ryunosuke walked forward, a solitary figure caught between the past and the future, bound by the samurai code yet free from the darkness that once consumed him. His journey was far from over, but in this moment the empire of shadows had been pierced by a blade of resolve and hope. The shogun's palace lay in a heavy silence, broken only by the distant echoes of footsteps and the occasional creak of ancient wood settling under the weight of a dawn that promised a new era, yet bore the somber stain of bloodshed. Takeda Ryunosuke stood motionless, his breath shallow and ragged, the weight of his armor seeming to press down harder than any enemy's blade ever had. Around him, the once grand chamber bore the scars of the fierce battle, the shattered screens, splintered floorboards, and the subtle scent of incense mingled with iron and sweat. Before him, Lord Matsuda Nobuyuki lay unconscious, the cold calculation that had once animated his every move now extinguished like a flickering candle snuffed out in the wind. Ryunosuke's eyes, sharp yet clouded with exhaustion, scanned the room and then rested upon his own hands, stained and trembling slightly. The victory was his, yet it felt hollow. The conspirator who had sought to reshape the shogunate through shadow and deceit was undone. But the price paid was carved deep into Ryunosuke's soul. His body ached with wounds both seen and unseen. His spirit bore the heavier burden of loss of comrades fallen, of innocence shattered, and of the relentless demands of honor that left no room for escape. The heavy wooden doors of the chamber creaked open, and Kenta Moriyama entered, his broad shoulders hunched with weariness, but his eyes alight with unyielding loyalty. Without a word, Kenta moved swiftly to Ryunosuke's side, offering steady support as the Ronin's legs threatened to give way beneath him. The two men, bound by a bond forged in childhood and tempered by countless battles, exchanged a glance, one filled with unspoken understanding of the cost borne and the battles yet to come. Outside, the first light of dawn spilled over Edo's sprawling rooftops, casting long shadows that seemed to retreat before the growing promise of day. The distant tolling of temple bells signaled the shattering of the conspiracy's grip. But the city's streets remained tense, aware that peace was a fragile veneer over deep-seated rivalries and wounds. Within the quiet of a nearby chamber, Aiko Hanami, her face pale from recent captivity but her spirit unbroken, met Ryunosuke's gaze. With careful words, she recounted the political tremors their actions had set in motion, whispers of dissent among the noble houses, power vacuums waiting to be filled, and the uncertain path ahead for the shogunate. Her voice, though steady, betrayed the vulnerability of one who had seen the undercurrents of danger up close. Yet her presence was a beacon of hope amid the encroaching shadows. Lady Mitsuko entered then, her noble bearing undiminished despite the grim circumstances. Bowing solemnly, she acknowledged Ryunosuke's triumph and the heavy burden it entailed. The flickering candlelight cast long shadows across the room, mirroring the complex interplay of honor and loss that defined the moment. Her words were few, but weighted with respect and shared sorrow, a silent testament to the sacrifices demanded by loyalty and duty. Ryunosuke allowed himself a rare moment of stillness, reflecting on the path that had led him here from the haunted streets of Edo to the heart of a conspiracy that threatened the very empire he once believed in. The samurai code that had guided him was both a shield and a chain, offering clarity yet demanding sacrifices that no man could fully reconcile. As the city stirred awake under the new light, Ryunosuke knew this was not an end but a beginning. The shogunate had survived, but the cost was etched into the bones of those who had fought for it. His own journey would continue alone, burdened yet resolute. The empire of shadows remained, but within its depths a single flame of justice still burned. The wind brushed through the open windows, carrying with it the mingled scents of cherry blossoms and smoke. Ryunosuke stepped forward, each movement deliberate, the weight of his choices settling like armor around his weary heart. The dawn was breaking, and with it came the quiet promise of a future shaped by those willing to bear the price of honor. Yet even as the light grew stronger, the shadows lingered reminders that in a world built on loyalty and betrayal, the path of the samurai was never truly free from darkness. And so, with a final glance to the rising sun, Ryunosuke moved forward, his resolve unbroken, his spirit tempered by loss but never defeated. The price of victory was high, but it was a price he was prepared to pay, because, in the empire of shadows, honor was the only light that could guide a lost soul home. The soft rustle of the bamboo leaves was the only sound accompanying Takeda Ryunosuke as he sat quietly on the veranda of a small tea house perched on the outskirts of Edo. The dawn had painted the sky with hues of pale gold and muted lavender. Yet the serenity of the morning was at odds with the turmoil that churned beneath his stoic exterior. His sharp eyes, framed by a weathered face, marked with the passage of countless battles and sleepless nights, scanned the mist-covered garden before him. Each droplet of dew glinted like a fleeting memory, fragile yet indelible. Ryunosuke's thoughts drifted to the sacrifices he had made, the lives lost, and the rigid code that had governed his every action. The samurai code, Bushido, had been his guiding light, a beacon of honor and duty. Yet now, in the aftermath of the bitter conflict that had shaken the foundations of the shogunate, it felt more like a heavy burden, shackling him to a path fraught with pain and doubt. The faces of fallen comrades haunted him, their silent reproach echoing in the chambers of his heart. The stillness of the morning was broken by the soft clink of armor. Kenta Moriyama approached, his broad shoulders hunched slightly beneath the weight of his battle-worn gear. The deep scars that crisscrossed his face told stories of their own, stories of loyalty tested and blood spilled in the name of a fallen clan. He stopped beside Ryunosuke without a word, the tension between them palpable yet underscored by a bond forged in fire and hardship. "You sit as if the world's weight rests on your shoulders," Kenta said gruffly, his voice low but edged with concern. "Honor is not just about clinging to old codes, Ryunosuke. Sometimes it demands sacrifice, not just of life, but of pride." Ryunosuke's eyes met Kenta's, the unspoken history between them filling the space. And what if sacrificing pride means betraying the very code that defines us? He replied quietly, the conflict evident in his tone. "Is there honor in compromise?" Kenta's jaw tightened. "There is honor in survival, and in protecting those who cannot protect themselves. We fight not for ourselves, but for the future, even if that future is uncertain." The exchange lingered as the two men sat side by side, their silence heavy with meaning. It was then that Elder Shogun appeared, his presence like a calming breeze amid the storm. The aged samurai moved with a grace that belied his years, settling beside Ryunosuke with a serene smile beneath his long white beard. "The cherry blossoms bloom but briefly," Shogun began, his voice steady and wise. "They remind us that life is fleeting, and that honor must be tempered with compassion. The code is a guide, not a shackle. Remember, Ryunosuke, that mercy is not weakness, but strength concealed." Ryunosuke absorbed the words, feeling the weight of his mentor's wisdom settle deep within him. The parable wove through his mind like a soothing balm, easing the sharp edges of his inner turmoil. As the day wore on, the conversation turned inward. Ryunosuke reflected on the choices that had brought him here, the betrayals, the battles, and the painful sacrifices. The samurai code that once seemed so absolute now shimmered with complexity, revealing the tension between strict adherence and the need for adaptability. When dusk finally fell, Ryunosuke found himself standing alone at the edge of a cliff overlooking the sprawling city of Edo. The city lights flickered below like a sea of stars, a testament to resilience amidst darkness. The cool night air whispered against his skin, carrying the scent of distant fires and the faint hum of life continuing despite the shadows. He clenched his fists, the resolve hardening within him. Though the road ahead was uncertain and fraught with peril, he knew that his path must evolve. The echoes of sacrifice would guide him, not as chains, but as the foundation of a new understanding, one that allowed for mercy, pragmatism, and the enduring pursuit of justice. "The code is not my master," he murmured to the night. "It is my compass, and I will follow it, even if the path leads through darkness." With one last look at the shimmering city below, Ryunosuke turned away from the cliff's edge, stepping forward into the unknown. The dawn was still distant, but within him burned a quiet hope, a determination to carry the legacy of honor beyond the shadows and into whatever future awaited. Yet, as the wind carried the soft sound of distant footsteps, a subtle unease lingered. The sacrifices made were not over, and the choices Ryunosuke must face were yet to come. But for now, in this moment between night and day, he embraced the burden and the beacon of his code alike, the echoes of sacrifices that lay ahead on the breeze. A solemn reminder that honor was not merely a tradition, but a living, breathing force, one that demanded courage, reflection, and above all, heart. And as the first stars faded beneath the coming dawn, Takeda Ryunosuke stood resolute, the embodiment of the samurai spirit amidst the empire of shadows. The pale light of dawn crept slowly over Edo, casting long, gentle shadows across the city's wooden rooftops and narrow alleys. Takeda Ryunosuke stood silently on the veranda of a modest dwelling, his temporary refuge, his sharp eyes tracing the waking movements of the city below. The once tumultuous streets now bore a fragile calm, the echoes of battle and conspiracy replaced by the soft murmur of daily life resuming its course. Yet within Ryunosuke's chest, a storm of unease churned quietly beneath his composed exterior. The shogunate, bruised but unbroken, had begun the slow process of healing. The conspirators who threatened its fragile peace had been unmasked and defeated, their shadows lifted by Ryunosuke's relentless pursuit of justice. Still, victory brought no celebration, no chorus of gratitude. Instead, an aching void stretched between him and the world he had saved, a world that no longer felt like his own. He inhaled deeply, the scent of blooming cherry blossoms carried on a gentle breeze filtering through the open sliding doors. The delicate petals fluttered down like soft whispers, settling on the wooden floorboards at his feet. Such beauty seemed cruelly indifferent to the cost paid in blood and betrayal. Ryunosuke's thoughts drifted to those lost friends, foes, and innocents caught in the merciless tides of ambition. His solitude was broken by the faint sound of approaching footsteps. Turning, he saw Lady Mitsuko gliding across the garden path toward him, her elegant kimono trailing lightly behind her. Her presence was a balm to the weary Ronina, reminder that amidst the shadows there were still those who cared. "Ryunosuke-san," she greeted softly, bowing with grace. "The city awakens, and with it, a new hope stirs. But I see the weight upon your shoulders remains heavy." He nodded, accepting the delicate bowl of tea she offered. The warmth seeped into his hands, grounding him in the moment. The shogunate endures, Lady Mitsuko. Yet I find myself adrift, a relic of a past that no longer has place. Her eyes, reflecting the flickering candlelight within the room, held quiet understanding. You carry the burden of honor as if it were a blade cutting both ways. But remember, even the sharpest sword must sometimes bend to survive. Ryanosuke's gaze fell to the steaming tea, the fragile steam curling upward like a promise. Perhaps, but I fear that bending may cost me more than I am willing to pay. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Kenta Moriyama, whose broad frame filled the doorway as he entered with a determined air. Ryunosuke, the peace we fought for is fragile. You cannot carry it alone. Without a word, Ryunosuke followed Kenta outside to the garden, where the damp earth still held the scent of last night's rain. They engaged in a sparring match, blades flashing under the soft morning light, each strike a conversation of its own. Kenta's straightforward, forceful style contrasted with Ryanosuke's measured precision, yet beneath their practiced movements lay a tension neither voiced. The pain of distance grown between comrades, once inseparable. After a final parry, they parted, breath ragged, the unspoken truth lingering like the fading echo of steel. You carry too much alone, Kenta said, his voice rough with concern. We all do. Ryanosuke's only reply was a brief nod, the weight of brotherhood both a comfort and a chain. Meanwhile, in the bustling marketplace, Aiko Hanami moved with quiet purpose, her plain kimono blending with the throng of merchants and townsfolk. Her keen eyes missed nothing, the hopeful smiles, the wary glances, the undercurrent of tension beneath revived commerce. She gathered whispers and rumors, a shadow weaving through the light, her mind balancing the delicate dance of espionage and survival. Despite the outward calm, Aiko knew the world had not forgotten the shadows from which it had just emerged. The price of peace was eternal vigilance, and she was determined to stand watch. As day fully awakened, Ryunosuke returned to his quarters, the solitude pressing in once more. He contemplated the path ahead, no longer a wandering shadow, yet not fully embraced by the light. The samurai code that had guided him for so long now felt like both armor and shackle. He understood that his journey was far from over. The empire had survived, but at great cost, and Ryunosuke himself must find a new way to honor those sacrifices, whether within the fold of society or beyond its reach. The first rays of the sun broke over the horizon, bathing Edo in a soft golden glow. Ryunosuke stepped outside, the cool morning air filling his lungs. With a steadying breath, he began walking forward into the uncertain dawn, a solitary figure bound by the samurai code yet free from the empire's shadows. His story was no longer solely about survival or vengeance. It was about endurance, hope, and the quiet strength to carve a place in a world forever changed. And as the city stirred to life beneath the awakening sky, so too did the ember of Ryanosuke's resolve faint but unyielding, promising that even in the darkest times the dawn would come. The chill of the evening air wrapped around Takeda Ryunosuke as he settled onto the jagged rocks overlooking Edo. The sprawling city below flickered with countless lanterns, each a small beacon against the impending night, but to Ryunosuke they seemed as distant and unreachable as the stars winking overhead. The wind stirred the tall pines behind him, their needles whispering secrets in the language of the ancients. He inhaled deeply, the scent of incense mingling faintly with smoke and the earthiness of the encroaching night. This solitude was no longer unfamiliar, but a chosen state, a quiet fortress against the chaos of the world he had just left behind. Years of wandering had tempered him like the steel of his blade, each battle and betrayal carving deeper into his soul. The bitter taste of loss still lingered, a shadow that clung stubbornly despite the gradual light of hope he sought to kindle within. Bound by the samurai code, yet free from allegiance, Ryunosuke had learned that honor was not a chain, but a compass. It guided him even as it weighed heavily on his shoulders. The empire of shadows he once fought to protect was fractured, and so too was the man who had stood in its defense. A soft rustle of footsteps drew his gaze to the path where Kenta Moriyama approached, his broad silhouette cutting a familiar figure against the darkening sky. The scarred Ronin's face was etched with the same weariness and resolve. Without a word, Kenta settled beside Ryunosuke, sharing the silence that spoke volumes. "The city changes," Kenta said finally, his voice a low rumble, "yet the shadows remain." Ryunosuke nodded, his sharp eyes scanning the horizon. "We have done what we could, but now the path forward is mine alone." Kenta's gaze held a mixture of respect and sorrow. "Solitude is a heavy burden, brother. It is the only way I can remain true to the code." Ryunosuke replied quietly, "To live within the shadows, yet not be consumed by them." The following days brought a fleeting reunion with Aiko Hanami in a quiet tea house tucked away from prying eyes. The room was modest, paper lanterns casting a soft amber glow, the faint aroma of brewed tea mingling with the lingering tension between them. Isio's graceful figure seemed at odds with the dangerous life she led, but her sharp wit and fierce loyalty shone through every measured word. "You carry the weight of all this," she said, her eyes searching his face. "Yet still, you walk forward." Ryunosuke met her gaze steadily. "Honor demands no less. But solitude will be my shield and my sword now." Their conversation was brief, but laden with unspoken understanding. The bonds forged in fire and betrayal would not be easily broken, yet Ryunosuke knew his journey must diverge from theirs. The world they had fought to save could no longer hold him. Before his departure, Elder Shogun found Ryunosuke beneath a blossoming cherry tree, the delicate petals drifting down like pale snowflakes in the gentle spring breeze. The aged samurai's calm presence was a balm to the restless Ronin. "The code is a path, not a prison," Shogun said, his voice steady with the weight of years. "Balance is the way of the true warrior between honor and pragmatism, between solitude and connection." Ryunosuke listened intently, the old man's words settling deep within. "I have been rigid," he admitted, "but now I see that strength lies in knowing when to yield and when to stand firm." Shogun nodded. "The Empire's shadows will always surround us, but you choose the light you carry within." At dawn, Ryunosuke stood alone at the threshold of a mountain path, the first light casting golden hues across the land. His silhouette, sharp and resolute, was framed by the rising sun. The air was crisp and filled with the promise of renewal. He tightened the sash of his kimono, the simple but well-maintained samurai attire, a testament to his enduring spirit. With each step into the unknown, Ryunosuke embraced the solitude he had once feared. His heart still beat with tension, the unresolved conflicts of his past and the uncertain future, but now tempered by a fierce determination. The samurai code was no longer a burden, but a beacon, guiding him through the empire of shadows. As the path wound upward, the distant sounds of Edo faded into the morning stillness. Ryunosuke's mind was clear, his resolve unshaken. He walked not as a lost Ronin, but as a sentinel of honor, poised against the encroaching darkness, ready to face whatever fate awaited beyond the dawn. Yet, in the depths of his heart, a quiet question lingered. Could a man truly remain honorable while walking alone, when the world he once knew was fractured by betrayal and deceit? The answer awaited him on the winding road ahead, where shadows and light intertwined in an eternal dance. And so, beneath the awakening sky, Takeda Ryunosuke stepped forward, solitary, steadfast, and unyielding, into the next chapter of his journey. The pale light of dawn crept slowly over the horizon, casting a gentle glow across the sprawling city of Ido from a quiet hilltop. Takeda Ryunosuke stood motionless, his sharp eyes tracing the awakening cityscape below. The air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of cherry blossoms that fluttered softly in the morning breeze. This moment of serene stillness was a fragile reprieve, a breath held between the storm that had passed and the uncertain future before him. Ryunosuke's figure was a silhouette against the softening sky. Tall and lean, clad in the simple but well-maintained attire of a samurai who had long since shed noble trappings. His weathered face, marked by the years of hardship and loss, was calm yet resolute. Beneath the quiet exterior, a fierce determination burned the embers of a man who had fought not for glory but for justice, honor, and a fragile hope that the empire might yet find balance. Behind him, hidden by the embrace of the early morning mist, Aiko Hanami and Kenta Moriyama watched in silence. The light caught the delicate lines of Aiko's slender form, her plain kimono folding softly around her as she held herself with quiet grace and strength. Beside her, Kenta's broad shoulders tensed, scarred hands clenched loosely as he bore the weight of their shared sacrifices. Their gazes were heavy with unspoken sorrow, the pain of loss, the fracture of comradeship, and the respect for the path Ryunosuke must now walk alone. The city behind them was slowly stirring, merchants opening stalls, the distant clatter of wooden geta on cobblestone, and the faint murmur of prayers from a nearby temple. Yet, for Ryunosuke, the world felt both vast and isolating. The wounds of betrayal and the cost of victory lay deep within his soul, etched by the faces of friends fallen and trust shattered. Still, the samurai code that had guided him through darkness remained a steady beacon, compelling him forward. Far from the hill, in a shadowed chamber adorned with delicate screens and rich tapestries, Lady Mitsuko sat alone. The flickering candlelight danced across her composed features as she penned a letter with deliberate strokes. Her eyes, sharp and clear despite the late hour, betrayed her concern for the fragile political landscape she had helped protect. Every word was weighed with care, a secret, a lie's pledge to guard the embers of peace she and Ryunosuke had fought to preserve. Back on the hill, Ryunosuke adjusted the worn leather strap of his katana sheath, feeling the familiar weight settle against his side. The blade was more than a weapon. It was a symbol of his honor, a tether to the past, and a promise to the future. With one final breath, he turned from the city, his footsteps steady as he descended the hill toward a narrow forest path. The forest was alive with the sounds of morning birdsong weaving through the rustle of leaves, the soft crunch of fallen foliage beneath his sandals, and the distant flow of a hidden stream. Light filtered through the canopy, igniting the world in warm hues of orange and gold. Each step carried him away from the shadows of political intrigue and toward an uncertain horizon. Yet solitude did not mean surrender. Ryunosuke's heart pulsed with quiet resolve. The empire of shadows would endure, as would he, not as a pawn of power, but as a guardian of the samurai code and a seeker of justice in a world where trust was scarce and honor costly. As the sun rose higher, Ryunosuke's silhouette merged with the landscape, a solitary figure walking into the dawn, a testament to endurance, sacrifice, and the relentless pursuit of a path that few dared to follow. The empire might be shrouded in shadows, but within him burned a steadfast light, a beacon for the days yet to come. And so, with the first light warming his face and the whisper of the wind urging him onward, Takeda Ryunosuke stepped into the new day, a ronin bound by honor, shaped by loss, and forever determined to walk the path of justice alone. The story closed not with a promise of peace, but with the enduring tension of a man who knew that in a world of shadows, the true battle was never over. As the dawn unfurled its glow, Ryunosuke's journey continued, a solemn oath whispered beneath the rising sun.